because I passed this off to other people. So I might have to regrade those questions. I chatted with the TAs for my 1400 class, similar question in 1400. And of course, as soon as I got talking to them on Monday, they said, "Oh yeah, this is the last question with the move the marker to the error." And the move the marker to the error part relies on a hit mask, so a rectangular box that you draw out, where I would expect people to put the tag. Now, it turns out when I went checked with my 1400 students, despite everyone testing all this stuff out, uh, it was calculating the grades wrong. But on top of that, I knew there was going to be a problem because and I figured I had to manually grade that afterwards. But I thought people wouldn't necessarily freak out yet. But yes, I should have realized that one. Um, because I wanted to be able to, it's purely was meant for reference. That's why actually the number of points for that part was dropped down so much, because I know people are going to be missing a particular mark, but it was going to be close enough that you would say, oh yeah, that's what they meant, or that they just put things randomly, right? So there's a whole bunch of different options. What was even worse though is I was allowing, I think I said a grand total of 5 or 6 different errors because there was 5 or 6 different errors that were actually in the code, but I only needed 3 of them. There was no way for CU Learn to allow you to take the top 3 or the 3 that you put in there, but not count the other 2, that sort of thing. And so I figured it may have to be manually graded, but the TAs for this class didn't get back to me about, like, didn't ask about that or anything like that. So I said, okay, I haven't heard anything yet. Talked to the TAs at 1400 and they're like, yeah, I had to manually update everything. Oh, so we're going to have to manually redo those questions. It's just a matter of looking over what you put in there and just stomping in the new grade. But it does mean pretty much everyone's question, the grades for that particular question will be off. I do need to reach out to the TA about that now because the other TA still hasn't graded his questions yet. So I figured I had, we were not going to be debating or starting the clock for like the 2-week feedback period for exam 2 until all the grades, all the different parts were in. Um, all the different parts are not in yet, so I figured we had a little bit of time. But at the same time, yeah, let's fix that as soon as we can, because the mark you got on that is not necessarily indicative of what your actual mark should be.
Okay, thank you.
No
I
problem.
also have one more concern for uh the the code for like the MC question and the MC long question. I don't think the format was the best because I had spent a lot of time scrolling up and down on the code, and which kind of wasted a lot of time in terms of answering the next 3 questions after that.
For the multiple choice question where we gave you code to look at,
Yes, because I don't know if there's a better way to doing this, but that's just what I thought. It's just I spent a lot of time scrolling up and down to try to figure out what's happening.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, the reason they were all put on one page was first of all, one of the normally I'd have a printout and you'd rip off the back page, and then you'd have the piece of paper and you could flip back and forth between the two, right? Easy, breezy. One of the pieces of advice that you get, actually, I was breaking that piece of advice. The normal piece of advice is let me see here. You should or you should not do, I think you should do one question per page to reduce the chances for the possibility of cheating, people just grabbing screenshots of it and posting it online, because it's more of a pain in the bum to get all the various parts. Um, but that being said, those 3 questions, because they all related to the same piece of code, I thought it was easier to have the code there and have 3 different questions, right? And then you can go back and forth within your code. And it is slow, but so is having the same piece of code duplicated. And then people going, well, what if something changed from the last time?
The other
Uh,
issue with
and so, yeah, that was a judgment call on my part. Maybe it was a wrong judgment call. Beth, did you?
I had an issue last year where all of my questions on an exam were on separate pages, and my internet was kind of slow at the time. So every time I went on to the next page, it would take like several seconds for it to load, and that took a lot of time out of how much time I had to answer just because there were so many different questions.
I think it's fair to say that this whole thing, unless you unless I guess cheaters would like this, but other than cheaters, I don't know how many people would like an online exam over a physical exam. I mean, it does get easier for us grading it. There are some benefits, but it doesn't seem like the benefits beat the costs. The costs are pretty bad, right? There is nothing quite like if you get into an exam and something is wrong with the exam, you put up your hand, I answer. I was hoping to do that for this exam for all of you that reached out to me during the exam, but enough people presumably do not are a little scared, to ask during an exam. But if I'm walking by them during the exam, they put up their hand, right? And so I think there's something to be said about that as well. It's crappy all around for you guys. It really is. It just crappy. It's crappy for me too, but it's even crappier for you guys, right? The fact that I can't, if you run out of time on an exam, this thing automatically submits it versus you run out of time on the exam and I can gently sort of pull the exam from your hands kind of thing. Like there's granularity, there's subtlety that you can do in a physical exam. So let me see what the other things are. But yeah, I appreciate the feedback. I still don't know if replicating the same chunk of code on 3 different pages is faster or slower in terms of like less scrolling back and forth, but then your new page each and every time, and you're wondering if the code has changed at all, unless you explicitly state the code has not changed. But I appreciate the feedback because I think you might be right. Slows down. Yep. Pretty much, they're crap. Yes, we're all in agreement. They're crap. Which question, by the way, did you misinterpret? Having 3 markers correctly or 5? No, you just need the 3 markers. So I have to regrade that, or have the TAs regrade it just so they look over where you put the markers. Close enough, good enough. We'll substitute the points. Question 6, the one that get text function. Yeah, the get text function. I think enough people had trouble with that, and it was a little surprising. I had people ask, and then I tried to explain it on the exam, and I'm not sure I did justice for it. Okay, get text. What does it do? The original one returns a string. Okay, what if I don't want it to return a string, like a string object? What if I wanted to fill in a character array? It's like a string, but just a different format of the text. So get text returns text either as a string or a character array. Okay, if it's a character array, I can't send back out the character array. I don't want to dynamically create memory and send it out because it's not a really good task to do that, right? If I dynamically create memory and send it over, somebody else has to clean up my memory for me. And if I just return a character array, maybe I keep a character array around in the object the entire time, and I send it, I've given somebody else the right to modify that character array. I'm just sending a pointer to a character array. Anyone can do anything with it. To the point that I actually did this in a previous class last term, I do believe. And, once you send that character array over to somebody else, they can modify it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So unless you have like some kind of there's other workarounds. The solution is you pass in an array and you fill it up for the person. So it is like, bring your own bottles, or bring your own, if you bring you guys are maybe too young for this kind of thing. Bring a growler to a bar. Like those are the big glass bottles you can fill beer up or cider, whatever you want from a cidery or a brewery. It's a bring your own thing. It turns out in Evian, the water place, you can bring your own bottles. They'll have a tap outside the factory, and you can just fill up your bottles with Evian water for free, right? Bring your own bottle. That's what we're doing here. You pass me in an array, I will fill it up for you. So A out was the text going out. I'm going to fill in your array with that text. And we've done that same sort of thing before. You've done it with scanf. Scanf does that, right? You pass in some variable, I will change the variable for you, and you get it back again. That's what we're trying to get. That's what I was at least trying to get across. You were filling in that array that came into the function. You just fill in the value. And it's another way of getting text. That's why they're both called get text. It's overloading. That's what I was aiming for. It's meant to be function overloading, either return a string or return, or I fill in the array. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be reading Discord or not, but because Elijah keeps on sending me stuff. Elijah, are you in here? No. Maybe tell him to join the chat here. So I don't know if that helps clarify what was aimed at, right? So I thought I gave an explanation of how that would end up being used, right? You pass in the array into the function, it gets filled in. So you're passing in something for me to fill up for you. Okay. Multiple choice question one with a constructor and destructor. How many constructor calls and how many destructor calls you mean, Fatima? Because I think you guys are so quiet. You guys really don't like showing your faces, do you? It's a little bit alarming. I'm used to people seeing people's faces. Okay, so that question ends up being a really subtle question. That's why my multiple choice questions are jerk kind of questions. I wasn't the first one to come up with this question, though. So even the really nice profs you have in the department came up with questions like that. Hi, Kylie. So the multiple choice question that we're talking about is if you have a constructor of a child class, what happens? Well, you can, every time I make one of these child classes, what happens? The constructor of the child class gets called, and a constructor for the parent class gets called. When I destroy it, the parent of the child destructor gets called, and the parent destructor gets called. I get 2 destructor calls when the child gets destroyed. And so what you're counting is how many times one of the parent objects gets created, how many times a child object gets created, and you have to count when this happens. If I have an array of pointers, though, what happens? Nothing happens when I make an array of pointers. They're just pointers. They don't get created until I call new. And so it's how many times new gets called, right? And each time new gets called, if it's a child class, I'll create a parent. The parent constructor will be called, and the child constructor gets called. When that thing gets called, a delete gets called on it. The parent destructor gets called. The child destructor gets called. And so it's seeing if you understand how constructors and destructors are called, what the order of those calls are, and when they get called. Because it doesn't get called when you make a pointer to it, it gets made when you call new. That hopefully answer your questions. All right. Other questions? I'm also more than happy to go over A6 or whatever you guys want to go. Yeah. It's multiple choice questions. People always say, oh, you give me multiple choice questions. And they get my multiple choice questions and they go, no, stop giving me multiple choice questions, because it's really, you can make easy multiple choice questions, but where's the fun in that? I know it's not fun, but multiple choice questions, you can really poke at things. But if it's ambiguous at all, which there should be some ambiguity, you would expect you to get wrong, even though you probably know what you're talking about. You can get it a little bit off and then it's completely wrong. Question 7, part 4. What was part 4? Simon, is Simon here still? Yeah, he's still here. Simon, what's question 7, part 4? Oh, we can go over priority queues for sure as well. Yep. How to make a priority queue, or because I have to look that up every single time myself, and I wasn't expecting to make one up, but I'll go over what the theory is at least. Question 7, part 4. That was I already answered that question. That's the one with the array being passed in, right? To make your own array. I don't think that's part 4.
Get text, I think.
Oh, get text, the overloaded method. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So what's going on there? That get text method, we can even I can even show it to you, hopefully. And here we go. Great. New item. Pick some random header file. I'm going to call it exam2 priority QUE. All right. Okay. Let's do get text. So we had this other method called get text, right? All it was doing was returning the actual text. But I said this time I actually want, so what do we call it? Option text, let's call it. All right. This is normally things like this. So whatever the option was at front, it was called either pretext or option text. Hey, different versions of the exam. And that's, sorry if that caused some confusion during the exam. I keep forgetting it. Some things get renamed. So there was a snippet of text that was unique that preambled the text. Okay, so I could call it A and then whatever field I want afterwards. I sort of separate the idea of what the bullet point is and what the option is. And it might be hello world. I always use hello world. Just, or let's give it a different name because people keep using hello world as their examples. So hello world. All right. All caps, or I can change various things. One of the things I was asking for is how would you test such and such a function? I think, well, maybe that's bit 1400. Yeah, I think it was bit 1400. How would you test this function? And you go, well, all caps, all lowercase, empty string, null, that sort of thing. So try different options. This one, I have two different parts to it. Option text equals, let's say this, and actual text is equal to hello world. All right. That's what's going on under the hood. What I expect option text to return, get text to return, is a hello, this thing here. So what do I need to do here? And I'm going to return, I do believe it's returning a string. Okay. And then this is called option text. And I'm going to have to comment all this stuff out afterwards. Get text. I have access to this is overloading my original method. So in my, let's do the header file version of it. Text.h. And it probably have your number like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. It would be something like this. In fact, I wasn't taking enough points for this, but it should be that. Just because if the parent version is virtual, this is going to be virtual anyways, automatically, whether you want it to be virtual or not, it's going to be virtual, as in it looks it up in a table where to find this thing. But you might as well just be very explicit. Yeah, by the way, this thing is virtual. Don't mess around, this virtual. Okay, so it is a virtual function so that when I call get text on an option text, I get this function, not the parent's one, I get this one. Okay, so my options are, I could do this, string main text, and I could say something like text field, : get text. That would get the text for the, get the actual text essentially. Turned out I went back and made it easier compared to my original question, and I made the actual text, I think it was only protected, meaning the child class has access to it too. Great. Now, I used that get text call, but that's fine. You could do it the other way. Either one works. Okay. And then what I wanted is I could do something like this. Return option text, I have that, plus main text. That's it. It's going to combine the two together. What other things could I have done? I could have said string red val is equal to option text, and then red val dot append, and then the main text, and that would also be fine. Also fine, right? They are not pointers to strings, so I don't have to worry about it being null or something like that. They will always be there. There's no possibility of, option text being null. So I can just append those two things and return it. The key takeaway, though, was that I have this thing. It looks like the other one. It has this thing instead. It is getting the actual text. It's getting the optional text, combining them together, returning them out. And it's a virtual function, even if you didn't need to say it was a virtual function, and knowing how objects actually work. So it may have seemed really hard, but from amount of code standpoint, it was pretty small. Does that answer your question? My issue here is that I never see the chat very well, or at least I don't see it. All right, let's see. All right, perfect. I hope I don't lose the chat. I always find a way to lose the chat. So sorry if I don't see your chat. Maybe you can just go or something like that in the microphone. Okay, I'm going to comment out all of this junk. And I'll hit priority queues unless somebody has other exam questions. This priority queues are involved for the homework. Did you want me to actually use a priority queue, or did you want me to make a priority queue or talk about priority queues?
Seeing examples is usually best.
Sure.
Real quick, exam-wise first. Were you going to be going over question 5? That was my Discord question. Just after the synchronous one, or did you want to go over it now?
Which one? Question 5 was a multiple choice question?
Yeah, it was related to the 2 other ones.
I would have to track down, I would have to go through the code again, see where either I'm wrong or you're wrong. And if I'm wrong, then everyone gets points. And I have to go back and give everyone points for that question.
Okay, yeah.
But I didn't have time to really go, it does take time to go line by line through the code, even now. So I was going to do that later, if that's okay with you. After the main function finishes, but before the program is how many times has the multiple choice constructor been called? And that's question 5. And the question is, okay, but how many times did delete get called?
There's different question 5s. That wasn't my question 5.
Oh, yes, that's right. They're also randomized as well.
Yeah, I had a different one. I had I think I basically wrote down my thinking in it, but it was, what is the value of mystery sum output in the printf statement?
Okay. I can say that I actually ran the code to see the value. I actually have the code, unless I change the code after the fact. So that's the one option, but I actually ran the code just to make sure, because
I might try running the code, but I went through the code multiple times and I kept getting the same answer.
And you could be right, because I may have changed something for all I know.
So I'll try running it just here.
Okay. So you want to look at a priority queue. I always forget how to get a priority queue. So let me see here. Include standard template library, or it's standard that's standard library. Do I have a separate one for? No, I think that should be standard library. Hopefully I get standard. I would have to look at the actual homework again to see what the priority queue syntax is here. I might be able to get that. Let's see here. I'm just looking at things. Priority queue, C++, standard library, C++. Yeah, and this is literally what I will be doing for when I write something. Okay, so I have a templated object. It actually contains a vector. It's priority queue is the name of the class. Great. And then I can just add stuff to the priority queue, and it's going to have a particular, and it's going to have pop and push and empty. Well, that's a Boolean check, and has something for the size, and I can set, okay. In place, pop, push, inserts, and sorts the underlying container. Oh, and sorts afterwards instead of inserting in order. I would have assumed it sorted in order. So let's actually go to what ends up happening. A priority queue. This is a lineup where, like if you were at the emergency room, that's a priority queue. It's not a normal lineup like you would go if you go to a tourist place. You're in a queue, you're in a lineup, everyone's the same. You go to a hospital, it's a different beast, right? If I show up missing an arm, I'm going to the head of the line, right? If you show up having a heart attack, you're going to the head of the line. You show up with a little boo-boo, you're at the back of the line. You might be waiting 4 times longer because higher priority people come in, they go in front of you. That's a priority queue. So essentially it's sorted in order of importance or ascending order. So if I have a whole bunch of numbers, it is 1, 2, 17, 22, 97. It's just going from smallest to largest, let's say. That's what a priority queue is. It will be a sorted queue when you're done with it. And so if I insert things into the queue and then pop things from the queue, remove things from the queue one by one, I will get things in order. So all a priority queue needs to do in order to sort a list, I stuff things in the queue, pull things from the queue, and I'm done. It will automatically sort it. I assumed, however, but might have been wrong, I assumed it was not sorting the items. I assumed that the priority queue kept things in order. And so when you added something to the queue, it went down the queue. Well, I should probably do the other way, but goes down the queue, finds a place to insert it, and inserts the item there. It's not just inserting it at the end. A priority queue should be inserting it in the right place. Or at least that's what I thought it was going to do. Let's call it PQ. It needs a particular kind of priority queue. It's going to take an integer, let's say, hopefully, and I should be able to undefined. Let's see if I can get, there we go. That should give me, hopefully that's going to give, why is standard library barfing on me here? Let's try this. Standard int, standard definitions, standard lib.h. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. All right. Let's see why priority queue is still barfing on me. Using namespace standard. Okay. There we go. So this should be a queue that I insert some values in. I'm also going to, let's insert some values into it. So pq dot push. Pushing is putting it onto the queue, and I'm going to put, it has to take in a numeric value. Now it could be, hopefully I'll do it right. I was doing it with objects before. So 17, let's say negative 34. Ooh, very elaborate. And let's say 0. Okay. I'm now going to rip off every element of this priority queue for int I is equal to 0, I is less than, let's do it this way. QUE size is equal to PQ dot, is it size? Okay. And now it might be a size underscore T. Let's see what it returns. I want to see what this thing says. Size underscore T. Size underscore T. My 1400 students were asking what that was. It just remaps to an unsigned integer. That's all it is. In case you ever wondered what the heck that was. The reason I took the number out beforehand was because if I'm removing things from the queue, that thing's going to keep on shrinking. And it gets a little bit wonky in terms of how I test my case. I would have to check just to make sure that the list is not empty and use a while loop or something like that. Okay, I'm going to get int query val is equal to pq dot pop. Will pop do it, or is it head? Let me see here. Push, pop, size, swap, top. Top will give me the actual value. Let's just call top, and pq dot pop. That's going to remove something from the queue. So I'm going to get the next value, the head of the queue, and remove it. So deal with the first person in line each time. And then I'm going to see out next PQ element, and then okay. The standard out should have done that. I need to figure out what the heck I'm missing. IO stream. All right. And then at the end of the day, it should be an empty queue, and I'll be done. Unsigned, signed, mismatch, queue size, eyes. Okay. I could make it unsigned id. There we go. Let's roll. There we go. So it's actually in reverse order. Live and learn. I thought it would have been in smallest to largest. It's largest to smallest. Now, did I put it in that particular order? Let's find out. Oh, I did put it in a particular order. Let's see what the heck this thing does. All right, it's still putting in the right order, but let's move things around. So let's make this 1734. Let's see what happens. Because if I put it in the queue, you would expect this thing to be further along, more closer to the head in terms of the order. But when you run something like this, okay, we see that it's in this order. It's starting from the largest going to the smallest. Okay, if I wanted to reverse, all I would need to do is just reverse if the order's in reverse order. So I could just add to the back and go to the front. That would be fine. I still have a sorted list or sorted array with no time at all, essentially, by just using one of these queues. From before, it was 20. Okay, so was the actual answer 20 though? Beth?
Yeah, I just tested the code and it printed 20, not 30.
Okay, and the answer was 20?
Yes, the
Okay.
correct answer according to the exam was also 20.
Okay.
Yeah, I just tested it too, and it is 20, but I don't understand why. Because it was both me and my dad checked the answer after the exam, and we both came up with 30 multiple times. So there's some
That sounds like a learning
misunderstanding going on.
opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I'm about to not debug it, but I'm going to just check what all the values are and try to figure it out.
I have a sneaky feeling it's the number of, oh, it's because I have an overloaded method. One of them does they do different things. When I change the mystery number in one case, it changes the number one way, and in the other case, it changes it by a different amount. I'm not even sure if it's an overloaded, if it's a virtual function, it'll depend on what class it is. I don't remember if I made it a virtual function or I was even extra tricky and made it not virtual, and it was still calling the wrong one.
It wasn't virtual.
It's not virtual, so it's calling
was,
the wrong one.
It's calling McLong questions, which changes McQuestions adds 2 to it, but it should be going through that 6 times, which 6 times 5 is 30.
Does it? Isn't it a pointer to a McQuestion?
But it instantiates a McLong question.
Doesn't
over
matter.
that.
It's a pointer to a McQuestion. That's the what I wanted. This is the learning opportunity here. That's why
I think that's what I figured out before, but I asked a computer scientist and he was saying like, no, you can override that by instantiating it as a child class.
That person knows Java.
Probably. He hates C and C++ and he doesn't remember how to do it very well.
So C and C++ has this polymorphism where you have to use a virtual table. Otherwise, it says what kind of object, what kind of pointer are you? Oh, you're a MIC question, which I called it an MC question or multiple choice question, but MIC question, I like it. So before the hamburger comes in, a MIC question, it's a pointer to a MIC question, right? It doesn't know what kind of MIC question it is.
So it calls that one 5 times before calling Q2, which is a McLong question.
Which is then adds the +5 to get it to 20. Damn.
Yeah, isn't that?
So I think I added that up the right way the first time, and I answered that way on the exam, and so I got the question right.
Oh, I didn't.
And then I thought it was pure luck because I had the same problem last time where I picked the wrong answer, but it was the right answer on the exam because of the mistake that you made. And I made the same mistake, and so I got it right. And I also got this one right, and I was like, do I just keep lucking out?
But notice this is very, very, very similar to what happened with the shapes. When we were drawing shapes in the assignment, it kept on drawing a big gray box because it was calling the parent's version of a shape until you made it virtual. No, I accidentally made it virtual for you guys and gave you a free gimme. I think I made it. Oh, did I make it abstract for you? I screwed up somewhere along the line and gave away an answer.
I don't remember.
I did find the shape assignment MVC seemed pretty easy, refactoring stuff. But
with the shape assignment, if you did not make a virtual function and call the right virtual function, if it was not a virtual function, it would have called the generic shape class version of Paint or generic shape class version of whatever the function is. And so you wouldn't get what you're expecting. It had to be virtual. Otherwise, you would keep on calling the parent's version of something. Yeah, it was abstract. Damn abstract class. Thanks. So yeah, that was on the assignment as well, trying to hint at that in the assignment. I think I showed it a couple times in class where you would call this function, you think it's right, because every programmer in C++ does this. You think you're doing it right. You call the function because you know it's a rectangle. Of course it's going to work. And you somehow get the shape version of it. And it's because it's not a virtual function. It's just a shape. And because it's a shape, it knows it's a shape pointer. And so it thinks it's going to call the shape version of that function. Unless you make it virtual. And so that was a tricky question because it wasn't virtual. That's what tripped you up. And you naturally think it's going to be virtual because why wouldn't you make it virtual? But yeah, it was a tricky question. That's great. And I stumped your dad. Yeah. He's probably pissed off with me.
No, he's just like, oh, damn, should have noticed that. A bit rusty in C++. So
yeah, same issue then, I guess. Was,
my
friend is a computer scientist and except he hates C and C++, so he hasn't touched them in years.
The original designer of the language, if memory serves me correctly, not the original designer of the language, but one of the people that was introducing pointers to C and C++ sort of disavows having allowed people access to pointers in C and C++. She was like, nope, that was just a Pandora's box we shouldn't have opened, because it leads to kind of weird stuff like memory. There's some people that I know that still swear by go-to statements and swear by cleaning up your own memory. And I know myself well enough to know I'm going to screw that up. And I like garbage collectors. That's when you get your memory cleaned off automatically for you. But C and C++, the people that love the language, especially if you want speed out of this thing, it's alarmingly fast. It's still in use today because it's so alarmingly fast, because you have to control everything. You have to roll your own everything. It's
still being used for video games because like you want them to be as fast as possible, with even as you're trying to load it with as much like computations and graphics and stuff as you can. So because it's potentially the fastest language, it's the most demand for, especially for AAA games.
Yep, pretty much. Which is why things like Unity exist, because some people, most game companies cannot build their own everything. But and you could say the same thing for if you're doing any kind of backend stuff. That's why all of these different degree programs all are using C++ and C, because we needed an object-oriented language, and it's the only one that it's used everywhere still, despite the fact it's not exactly friendly to new users. I fully admit that one. It's a hard language to learn from, but it's also the only language we can all look at and go like, yeah, that solves all of our, that checks off every box for in terms of what industry is looking for all of our different degree programs. And it's actually directly being used to this day, 20 years later from when I went to industry, it's still in use. And it was old when I went into industry in 2001. Yeah, so it's not going away anytime soon.
I think I was reading when words were first used in print page, and C++ was like early 80s that the word was first used in print, and that would have been built on top of C, so C would have to be even older.
Yep, 1970s. Yeah, so C++ 84, I thought, but still, maybe I'm wrong about that one. It's early. It's even before my time. Not before I was born, but before my time. When I'm not even out of elementary school, the language that comes out, that's a pretty old language. Moses used to write C++, I think. So that's good. 10 Commandments, and he was awesome at C++. Okay. Sacrilege. Can I help anyone else? Does this help with the priority queue, or do you want to actually see how it actually works? The question on the assignment is not how it actually works. It's just use one of these things. But you'll notice something about this thing here. I got this sucker. Not the priority queue part, this thing.
I've never seen that syntax.
Yeah. Wonderful little bit of syntax there.
I think I have once. Is that the same syntax used in vectors?
Yeah, exactly the same syntax used in vectors. It's also the same syntax that prevented me from getting a job at Palantir. I never saw a template before in my life when I did the interview and was completely like, what the hell is that? So yeah, it comes up from time to time. So this is saying I'm going to make a priority queue, and what I'm storing in that priority queue are integers. I can make a priority queue that stores strings. I can make a priority queue that stores characters, or whatever the case is. Objects of all sorts of and types. Let's try it with a string, just for poops and giggles. Okay, I'm not going to put those in there. I'm gonna have to change some of these around. Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get, I might not get a problem that I think I do, but push. So pushing it on the end, that's the person coming into the queue. And I'm going to push, let's say string hello. Will that actually work? I'm going to see if this thing will work. Get the size, get the top. This thing is not going to be that. It's going to be a string curvel is equal to pq.top. And that should do it. Let's see. That really surprised me, actually. Let's try one other thing. Hello, this way. And I'm going to push by. Okay. Let's see this in action. I am shocked that that actually works. I'm shocked for one reason.
It's not printing it out, though, is it?
Yep.
Oh, it is. Never mind.
Although that's really weird. HB, capital H comes before. Yeah, that's right. Okay. It's still in order, right? Capital H comes before lowercase b in the ASCII table. Because I memorized it. And at least, yes, capital H comes before lowercase b, and lowercase b comes before lowercase h in the ASCII table. If you want, we can try a capital by in there just to see this in action. Okay, I'm going to add this by at the very top, though, just because. No, that's good. You're going to think it's not part of the, you're going to think it's the order I put it in. So let's put it after the hello, but before the other hello. Okay. Hello, bye, hello, bye. Okay. Great. Still in order. It's pulling them off in order because a priority queue keeps that list, that array or vector, that collection, I should say, in order. So when I pull off from the front, it's always the first, or actually the last in the list in this case. Why am I so surprised by this? I'm so surprised by this because it means that string, I have to be able to do a less than or greater than operator on two strings. Why? Because what I know about this priority queue is that anything you put on there has to support the less than operator, which you're like, how do you know this? Well, because if I put anything else in there other than something that supports the less than operator, it will blow up in my face. It just will not work at all. And that is, so let's say I remove this line here. I'm going to make, maybe I can make a struct in here. All right. I should be able to put a student in this thing. And what we're going to find out is that, oh, at least I hope we're going to find out, and it comes up with the assignment as well, is we should not be able to push anything, I'm going to push a student S. I hopefully will have some default values in here. Type is not allowed. Okay, why is the type not, the type name is not allowed. Okay. I'm hoping I hit that particular problem. Why is the type name not allowed? But an integer is. But a string is. I'm wondering if it's a struct thing, but I don't think it is a struct thing. There's something else going on here. And let's see if I might have to implement that the other operator. I should make maybe a class. So let's make the dumbest class ever. And this is public. That'll do, hopefully. Still not allowing me to do that. Maybe declared identifier, illegal use of type of expression. Should still blow up in my face. Okay, let's call it student. I'm going to be arrogant. Let's call it string. There we go. Hopefully it's still going to be broken for me. The reason I'm saying it's broken and why I'm expecting it to be broken is because to put something on a priority queue, and maybe that's not the reason, but I'm hoping it is. To put something in a priority queue, I might need the standard library. Put it in the priority queue, I need to be able to compare two things. I need to be able to see if one comes before the other. I do not have that less than operator implemented, so I cannot put that in the priority queue. The only thing I'm allowed to put in a priority queue is objects or items that implement the less than operator. And so I could put in, if I implement what the less than operator is for the student class, it would work. I don't want to get into the details on that one because it's going to get really, let's see if I can do it. What would it be? Boolean student, oh, it's operator less than student, is it S2? Let's try this. Oh, come on. ID is less than S2 dot ID. Hopefully. It might still be, oh, it's still blowing up on my face for some reason. Oh, I'm not allowed to do that one. Top dot name. There's somewhat of a problem here, but let's see. Yes, yeah, that's what it was. All right. And I'll remove the operator just to see. Not acceptable conversion. Okay, it has to be the left and the right for that particular operator. It should still work. Anyways, I have to always look up the syntax every time I overload an operator. It might be, here we go. Maybe it's that. Two view parameters for the operator function. I would have thought that it's a static function. I'll have to look into it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into this. I've done it for other cases, and I always look up operator overloading every single time. But effectively, I would look up how to do an operator overload because I know that when I use a priority queue, things have to be comparable between the two of them. We also did cases of operator overloading when it came to, I think it was printing out stuff using linked lists. How do I make sure it prints out with a linked list? Well, I need to overload the chevron arrows for outputting text to the screen for cout statements, essentially. And I can overload a lot of these operators along the way. But this, I don't want to get into the gory details on that one. But this is what I would have to do to make sure. Now, is that an oops or object-oriented programming? Yes, it is object-oriented programming. The object itself should know about how to deal with the comparison to the next object that I'm putting in there. Knowing how these objects work, when I'm adding these elements to my container, it needs to support certain rules. And that's what templating does. If you look at, I templated up the linked list class in a simpler format in a video, just to show you that in action again, right? That you can make a simple form of, I made a simpler form of the linked list, and I made sure that you could put whatever you want in that linked list. Sorry about that. And so let's get rid of this thing here and see what. I'm not sure what that's going to need to do. So I'm going to leave it alone. All right. So it is at least finding that thing though. So I do have an error in my code, but that's, I would have to figure that out. That's not worth your time, me dealing with that. Does that make sense what we're talking about for templating? And that's why it's another good point to bring up this, this priority queue business, because a priority queue is a templated class. We are going to also build other ones. We're going to do sorting. So you can make a collection of elements, or just even an array will work. But as long as those individual elements in the array support the lesson operator, you can sort them. And so you can call the sorting function that's built into the standard template libraries, or you can build your own sorting function. So if you want, I'm more than happy to go over sorting. I'm not sure, most of you probably, maybe a lot of you have already seen sorting. I keep thinking I'm going to pull up this surprise, hey, look how cool sorting is. And everyone's like, yeah, I did that 10 years ago. Yeah, it's easy. So I don't want to get too in the weeds on sorting, but if people want questions about sorting, or you have questions about hash tables, a lot of people have questions about hash tables, just speak up maybe. Okay, let's put that back in. But that's why I was surprised that the strings actually worked, because it means it has to be doing that comparison. Did hash tables make sense? No one looked at hash tables, maybe?
The hash tables make sense, I think. I'm a little stuck on how I'm implementing the hash table class itself. Like, I'm not sure if the class is supposed to be putting things into the list, or if it is the list, or if it's both.
It's
So
both. At least
yeah.
how I envision it, it's both.
yeah, the instructions weren't totally clear on that, so I'm just slowly hacking away at it. But
So hash tables, what are we going to do with a hash table? Because I know that I'm going to get next week on Monday night, I'm going to get about 40 emails about, oh my God, hash tables. So what do we have with a hash table? What I ideally want is it's a magic box. I store things into it. It automatically gets sorted, much like if I threw things into a filing cabinet and it automatically goes in the right folder. That'd be pretty sweet, right? I throw whatever I want into this thing and magically it gets sorted away from me. It does not work like that. Doesn't my kids found out that it doesn't work like that for them either. I do not magically clean up after them anymore, right? It's too nice of a system. So the hash table, if I wanted a hash function, let's say class my hash, let's make capital. What I really want is somewhere in here, I'm going to have big array of data, something to store all of it. And if it's templated, it's even better because I can store whatever the heck I want in this thing. What I'm going to need to do for that, though, is I'm going to need to be able to call, what would be the function? A hash functions, but I would need to be able to get the value for a hash function. So
This must be where the term hashtag came from. Because before
I'm
that, people just called
wondering-
it the pound sign.
Yeah. And I felt really old when all these people were calling it a hashtag. I'm like, it's a pound sign. What are you talking about? This was years ago, but, and I'm assuming that it might be using a hash to put things into particular positions. It does allow you to tag and categorize things quickly in a constant time. That piece of text will tell you where to store, where to find things. So it might be a bleed over from how it's implemented under the hood, but I have no idea. That's purely guesswork on my part.
Okay, yeah, I am old enough to remember when people started using hashtag as a common word instead of like the number sign or a pound.
Yeah. What? Why is it a hashtag? I'm also old enough to put punctuations at the end of my sentences when I do text messages. I've been told I'm an old man as a result, because who the hell puts a period at the end of a text message? Sincerely, David Sprague. Like, yeah, that's me. Okay, so what do we have for a hash table? I got a big old table of stuff. I got effectively a big, folder of different things. Like, where is my camera here? Right around. I got a bunch of stuff I could put in here. But I also have a magic lookup to where this thing is going to be stored. I want something so when you pass me something, I know where it goes. Like, actually, this might be a reasonable analogy here. Like in your kitchen, I don't know if you guys have organized your own kitchens, but if you're emptying a dishwasher or you're cleaning, you're putting away your dishes, where do you put the forks? Where do you put the knives? Where do you put that weird tray that you don't use that often? Where do you put your cups, your bowls, your sauce, whatever the case is? You have a particular position for that. So you take the object and you know where it gets slotted immediately. But you're not searching through your entire kitchen to find where to put the bowls. You know the bowls go in that cupboard over there. There's some way for you to map that bowl, it's a bowl, you know it's a bowl, to a position in space. Okay, that's what we're looking at here. So you already have a hash function. You have an ID that can be used in a hash function or to put it in a hash table. That ID, you need something that uniquely identifies you. And then that unique identification goes through a hash function, which tells you where to stick it. Just like the title of the book and the author of the book uniquely identifies the book and tells you where to put it in the library. Or maybe it's the ISBN number, for example. For you guys, it's your student ID. It uniquely identifies you as a student at Carleton. You put that, I put that into so let's take a student number here and let's give the simplest hash function here. So say 99 elements. So Wayne Gretzky number of elements. There we go. So let's give a student number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, let's do that. Okay. Or if you want me to throw in another number, let's put 3 in there. Okay. Let's pretend that's your student number. I want to take any student number that you want to give me at random. So pretend it's random. And I run it through this hash function, and it will tell me a place to stick this. So I have an array of 0 to 99 elements. I have 100 elements. It's 99 elements, 0 to 98 elements. Okay. I want where this thing is going to go. So what's the easiest thing I could do? What if I did that? What does that do? So what is this crazy big number mod 99? Actually, I don't know what that answer is. If it was mod 100, I could tell you.
Something under it. Well, something under 99. 98 and under.
It's 98 and under. It's probably close to 73 or something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. I like 72, 74, something like that. Let's keep it to 100. It's going to be bad in this case, but let's keep it to 100. Okay. Just to keep the math easy. What is that? Oh, maybe not seeing what I'm seeing. What is this crazy big number mod 100? Give you a hint. I did it in my head and I can't do math. So what's the easiest thing it probably could be? Or if I divided it by 100 and remove whatever decimal point afterwards, what would I get? I would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? If I divide it by 100. And what's my remainder?
The last 2 digits.
Yeah. Wait. I have something that is guaranteed to be a valid position in my table, don't I? So let's take another number. Let's say your number is 999999999 mod 100. It's going to position 99. Goes to position 11. In constant time, I can figure out exactly where that thing is going, and it's a perfectly valid position in the table. The question is that going to work in all cases? That is the simplest hash function. So my hash function looks like this. Int hash, and then I take in some kind of unsigned int ID, or maybe I can pass in, let's put a T, right? I'm going to have a templated object, or I could pass in a string, I could pass in something like that. The object I'm going to be passing in. And what I want returns position in the hash table index into the array. It is just saying, give me some position in a table given the object. So what could I do for the object? Well, if you pass me a pointer, why don't I just use the address of the pointer? That would work. If I have a student number, that'll work. That's a great hash ID. Well, that's a great number to base off your hash. It just has to be something uniquely identifying the object. I'm not going to have 2 pointers that are the same. I'm not going to have 2 student numbers that are the same. So therefore, I want something that every time I see that student, how do I know where they go? I take their student number, put them in the right slot. I don't want to use their name. There's too many John Smiths. But you pass me 1,001 students from this university. If I use their student number and then I do like a mod, I will get a position in a table for free. There's no searching. And when I want to retrieve that student, what do? I get their ID again. When I want to get this information about the student, they pass me their student ID, mod, however big that table is. That's where they're stored as well. It allows me to find where to access them in constant time. That's what a hash table is. It's a table using a hash to figure out where things go. It's a lookup. You pass me this object, I will tell you where to put it. trying to think of where I think we didn't have a hash in this. So, so that's what a hash table is. You pass an object, it returns some value. But if my hash function just say is, I have something like object dot get ID, something like that. What I wanted to point out with templating is if I want to use whatever T ends up being, whatever object I'm trying to store in my hash table is, it needs to support this function here. I don't know what the function, I don't know what this class is yet, but I know if my hash table uses some function called getID, that object has to have a function called getID. Otherwise, it won't let it be used as one of the objects being stored. Is that making some sense? I'm not sure if I'm clarifying or muddying the waters here. So if I have something called getID, and then I say mod table size, however big my array size, let's say. Before I said it was 100 elements. Well, whatever the array size is, before it was 100, it could be 202. It doesn't really matter. It'll tell me a valid position to stick this thing. It is not always the best position to stick things. And why is it not the best position to stick things? And so look at how we're doing for time. Why is it not always the best position to stick things? Because what if, let me think of a good example. Oh, there you go. So let's take, I don't know how your student numbers are being allocated. I have no idea what the algorithm they use. They're not probably just incrementing it by 1. So let's say every student number is incremented by 10. And let's say my array is 100 elements. What's going to happen?
It's going to be a lot of empty spaces.
A lot of empty spaces and a lot of the same multiple students going to the same spot,
Yeah.
right? Called a collision. And so there are cases where if I have a simple hash function, like a really simple one, like just taking the mod, all the elements just keep on going to the same couple spots and a whole bunch of empty spaces are never used. That's terrible. So there's an entire art form for designing a math formulation. So it might be this number multiplied by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, mod 9, 3, 5, 4, 7, 3, and then mod that, right? It could be any number of other, it could be some weird math, whatever weird math you want to do. That's, people spend their lives just studying a hash function or hash functions that are better at distributing your data around. If you give me random data, I know nothing about the data going in, to almost guarantee that it's pretty well distributed. You're not asked to do that. I'm just asking you, I think I'm asking you, come up with some hash function other than just, the array, mod the array, maybe multiply it by 10, mod the array. That would be fine. Maybe, multiply it by 17, mod the array, add 32 plus, divide it by 42, multiply array 17, whatever works. You just want something that is constant time, like those, like a math equation, that plops it into your table, and hopefully randomly in your table. So what you're trying to do is, I have a hash function, and I see how I put a bunch of data in my table. See how it gets distributed. Do I have a lot of collisions? Change your hash function slightly or a lot, depends on what you want to do. Change your hash function. See how it distributes the data in the table. Does it get better or worse? That's it. That's what you would need to do. Your hash function, I would probably want something like t get, and then I put in some kind of ID. What kind of ID could I put in here to get the value t? I want to get the object I'm looking for from the hash table. So maybe it's int ID in here. And what this is going to end up doing is And maybe my hash function just takes in int. Okay. So instead of using get ID, maybe I need to do something else. So ID times this. Okay. So here's what I'm going to end up doing. T is, so I get this particular thing. I will have a hash table. That's going to be the name of my hash table. And it's going to be hash at ID. That's the index. Okay, return that value. If I want to get the element based on that ID, I could also check to make sure it's not null, but I can return the element for that ID. Or if I'm holding, maybe these are pointers, let's say. So I have an array of pointers to this type of object, T. Could be a string, could be this, could be that. And all I do is say, okay, hash table, what do you have at this position? How do I know what position I'm looking for? Hash. I use my hash function. The hash function just magically converts one number to another number. The other number is where this thing is going. Its position in the table. And what you want it to be is as distributed across the table as you possibly can make it. If I want, let me see here. And then maybe void, add, and then that's something like object or element. Let's call it element. And I'll have an add function. Well, I need to figure out where the element is going to go. So I might have something like p element get ID unsigned int ID. Let's go to this, and then a hash table at the hash of ID at that position, right? The ID from this thing gets fed into this hash table. Then it says put it at position 42, goes to position 42. When I want to get the value back, I just put in the ID and I can get the object back again. So I can add, I can remove, I can check to see if it's empty or not. There's a lot of things I can do with this, and it's all constant time. I don't have to search through the table. I just jump directly there. My boys are playing a lot of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's when you go to one of the shrines, you can teleport to the shrine later, right? You're not walking around like a chump. You're just going to teleport straight there. Does that answer your question? Maybe that Breath of the Wild thing is a bit of a stretch, but they've been playing a lot of Breath of the Wild. It's really insane. They also have an encyclopedic knowledge of it, it seems. Okay. Can I help with anything else, or maybe make things more confusing for anyone else?
This part of the hash thing does make sense. I'm still a little stuck on, because I'm working on the tutorial, just because part 2 of the other thing is going to be related.
It's actually to take the tutorial, stuff it in the assignment, you're done, as far as I know.
Yeah. The thing I'm a little confused about is, so here you have the hash function and the get, and you're sending them the ID. But the ID, at least as far as I've gotten, isn't stored in the hash table. It's stored where, like, I'm using a point. So how can I send it in without just going into the function and grabbing the ID from whatever point I have?
So that's one of the ways you could do it, is actually you need to have implemented get ID or whatever that function is. Your template, if you have a templated class, you need to know that that object has some way of giving you an ID. The object itself has to say what uniquely identifies it. You're not supposed to be like, I know you're special, but I'm going to guess what makes you special, your first name, right? That would be insane, right? You want the object to say, you say, okay, object, what is your ID? And the object ID says, okay, my ID is this. The hash table it depends on how you want to view things. But from my perspective, you should be allowed to say, so when I want to add this thing, I say, hey, element, what is your ID? Not, give me a unique identifier. You're asking this thing to give it the primary key, the ID that specially identifies this thing. You
Yeah.
could,
I mean, in the case of like with your hash function, you're just sending it unsigned int ID.
oh
where-
yeah, so it's
And
just
that's
a
what it was
normal-
also asking in the tutorial. It says pass in the key, and I'm like, where am I getting the key to
It
be
just
able to
sends-
pass it in as a parameter?
It's some unique identifier. So it could be an integer, but you could also make it so that that's a templated thing as well. And it's just any old thing that you can just get, you can pass.
No, I mean,
in.
how do I pass it in as a parameter? Because like I can't just pass in get ID as the parameter, but my hash table doesn't store the ID. So like,
Oh, here's the
or I'm
ID.
not sending it in. So like what I'm meaning is for my hash table, rather than having a parameter, I just call get ID and then use it from there.
Yeah, which is what I did with add. And when I want to
Okay,
get it
but I
again
would just
later,
do that with the other two as well. With the
But-
get and hash.
pass in the object. Now you see what I figured
Yeah.
out. If you pass in the object, why do you need the object?
I just don't know where it's getting ID from right there. Or is it because it's only being called during like add or
When I'm adding the object, when I want to get the object back, I want to use the ID of. So if I have a bunch of your student information that's stored in a database, I'll ask you what your student ID is, and I'll get the information for your student information, right? Imagine this as a folder for your student information. You go in.
I think I was getting confused because it like in the tutorial it asks to make hash and get first. So it's like send in the ID as a parameter and I'm like, where am I getting the ID from? But if
That's
I had
good.
moved on and gone to like insert or whatever other functions are there, that's where I'm getting the ID from and then I pass it in. That makes more sense now.
Yeah, I should probably clarify that then. Yes, the get key and the hash are just right now. I'm doing them as an integer. They're just the unique key. And if you do anything with databases, you know what a primary key. You probably hit primary keys before. It's a primary key,
Mhm.
and it has
Okay.
all the markings of a primary key.
All right, that makes more sense then. I think
Nice.
I'm good.
All right. Can I unpack anything else for people? Don't have anything else. Nothing. We don't have a lot of interesting code here other than some chicken scratches in here. But I'm more than happy to try and unpack some stuff. But I think we hit most of the stuff for the exam, I think. And then on top of that, and you can, if you think I did some of the multiple choice stuff wrong, let me know. I already mentioned the fact that we're going to have to go over all of the marking questions to make sure that they're done right, because CLearn will not automatically grade those correctly. We looked at hash tables. We looked at templating a little bit. And we looked at priority queues and how priorities queues can be used to actually sort stuff. So this is me using a standard template library. And later on, if you want, you can actually make your own templated classes like I did with linked list in the demo videos. All right. Nothing else. In that case, I'm going to stop sharing and let me end the call. Yeah, just let me know if you get any trouble during the week and I'll try and help you out with it. All right. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.